I'm a journalist as in my profession. So I work for PA Post and WITF in Harrisburg, and I cover Latino communities throughout central Pennsylvania region. So from Allentown down to York. And so that's what I do professionally. And for the past year, before I started this new job, I was an independent writer and a workshop facilitator and a poet, which I was completely surprised when I found out that people were willing to pay for poetry. Somehow I made a living off of it for a year, and it's one of the best years I've ever had. But in these two worlds, they're very different. As a journalist, I have to be impartial and many times objective, or try to be objective in many situations. And in doing so, I remove myself and I try to oversee my biases, try to go past what I believe, and try to understand other people. In poetry, I'm very much in myself. I have to understand what I'm feeling, where I'm at, and many times it takes me a long time to understand exactly how I felt. So with this workshop that we're going to touch into, it's about creating poetry when you don't think you can, when you don't think you're ready.
My name is David Nazario. So I've been a writer, I would say, for all of my life. I started writing at about 8 years old. I'd say I've been a professional writer for about 8 years now. So as far as, well, let me back up a bit. So I'm a writer, but I'm also a speaker and an educator. So I've been blessed enough to be able to work in the education space, which I love to do, while I pursue a full-time writing career. So I've been doing that for about 8 years. I've done a number of different things, from newspaper writing on a freelance basis to some website writing about music and culture. And I also write poetry as well. Actually just finished my first poetry book, so I'm super excited about that, which Anthony helped me with some editing for, so I'm very happy about that. And I've been doing poetry for many years. I started writing poetry when I was about around 8 years old. And I remember really studying and and really appreciating the way that Maya Angelou put her poetry together. So that was a big inspiration for me. And for a few years, for a while, I didn't write poetry at all. And then it was something that I would say maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I got back into. And similar to what Anthony was saying, for me, poetry, a lot of times the poetry that I write, it's feelings, emotions, and things that live in a different space, than what what my other writing, where my other writing lives. I released my first book, Make Love Your Religion, that came out in 2018, and that's a self-help and a self-help slash memoir. So that is a kind of a very niche type of genre, or two genres. So oftentimes my poetry that I write about, my poetry book, is completely different from that. It's about my experience as a gay man, my sexuality and coming out and things like that. So that's a totally different space than the self-help and memoir space. So I really, I'm grateful for poetry. It oftentimes allows me to explore different ideas and different emotions and things that I don't get to explore in newspaper writing, or writing for a website, or writing, in the self-help or memoir genre. So yeah, that's kind of my intro there. So I'm super happy to be here, Reading native. I currently teach at RAC, and I do a lot of writing. Other than that, lately it's been a lot of poetry about the different things that are going on in the world, with extra quarantine time, and like I said, finishing up my poetry book that will come out. I'm not sure when, but soon, hopefully.
How I discovered poetry. So I consider myself biracial. My father was a very dark mestizo Mexican. My DNA results say I'm a quarter Native American, so I assume that he's half Native American, indigenous Mexican, northern Mexican. My mother is paper white, Her family has been in the United States before it was the United States. My dad came here illegally in the late 70s, early 80s. So there's these two worlds that I understood. And just by the way I look, I might be able to blend in with one group or another, but it also gave me insights because I was the undercover Mexican many times in the room.
Mhm.
And people would reveal things about themselves or beliefs that they had that maybe they wouldn't if they knew who I was. And then on the flip side, when you feel that sort of antagonism for being different, uh, you look to the other group and you're too different for them too. And I was really blessed. I feel like I was very blessed, even though that was an awkward part in my life. It allowed me to look outside of boxes. And it was a blessing because then I realized that everybody is full of crap. You know, everybody is full of these ideas that they're trapped in. And I was lucky enough to be forced out of at least one. And in my poetry, that's how I came about poetry. Was I got in a really bad fight. I got expelled from school. And they used poetry as conflict resolution. And I dabbled in it. Some people found potential in me. They fostered it. And now I am a professional writer. And I shared a link in the chat. And this is to Penn Street City of Poems Anthology and workshop materials. So Penn Street is the main street in Reading, but we changed the name from Penn, as in Pennsylvania, to Pen, as in writing instrument. And it was a collection of poems from people who live in the city or live near the city. At the bottom of that page, you'll find a collection of our workshops. So I held 13 free monthly workshops that touched on different aspects of poetry. So I want to look at workshop number 3 with you guys. And this is how to overcome your any writer's block that you're facing right now. And it's also a good way just to get primed into doing stuff. And I don't know if we want to take the time to do this because I usually cut out 10 minutes for us to go and write, but maybe we can just do bullet points and you guys can take this home with you later. And this will just be more of an insight in how to get what you're looking for. So the first big question you have to answer for yourself, if you feel something inside you that you need to express, that you think that somebody needs to hear, and you can't, identify that. So where are you stuck? Why does your poem or your statement feel incomplete or not yet birthed? And maybe you have poems or parts of a poem or parts of a statement created, but it isn't linked together. It's not working as a solid singular mechanism yet. So I want you to look at what you're wrestling with and try to identify what you're trying to reconcile in your poem. Maybe it's an ending. Maybe you've said a lot, you've expressed this feeling that you've had inside you that built up and you had this explosion, but you don't know how to end it. Or maybe it's that you don't know how to light that wick to get the explosion. Maybe you don't know what the start of your poem is. For me, if you're having trouble starting with your poems, it's because you're stuck in your head. You're editing yourself before you go, or you're stopping yourself from manifesting what's truly inside of you. So what you need to do is get out of your own way. And, as I say these things, much of this can be applied just to everyday life. It's easier to say than to do. So one thing is to get out of your own way. If you have something that you're working on, I suggest maybe bouncing it off other poets, other people who you respect, maybe not even poets, activists, community members, leaders, mentors, idols, people who you respect their feedback. So let them see it, let them digest it, and let them give you information. And even if you don't care for the advice that they give you. Many times when I recite a poem, there will be somebody in the room who connects with it, and they come up and then they tell you what they connected with, and you never thought of that in your poem. Like, you had no intention to evoke that emotion, but it happened for them. So even if you don't care for their advice, just see what they have to say, what their perspectives are. And many times, even if you don't like what they had to say, or it doesn't help you immediately, just to hear it may spark something in your head about something different. So I just want you to be open. So this is about opening and being receptive. So take notes. After you do that, forget all about it. It doesn't matter what anybody says to you. So you've had that in your head, you were receptive, forget about it. Shake out, like get up, literally get up out of your seat, shake out, take a walk around and clear your mind. And then what you're gonna do is, once you have loosened up, what you're gonna do is write about something completely different. So if your poem is about a breakup, I want you to write about a time that you found $1 in the street. If your poem is about the last time you spoke with your grandfather, I want you to write about a time that you were terribly late to something. If your poem is ethereal and about the choreography of lightning bugs on a summer night, I want you to write about a carjacking. Okay, so I basically want you to write about something completely different than what you're having trouble with. So I know that sounds a little counterintuitive, but I would say put a timer up for 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes even. Put your pen on a piece of paper and don't lift it. Don't stop moving it. Don't edit yourself. I want you to just create pages of notes about this thing that you don't care about. What color is the car? If what time of day is it? What does the person say when they jack the car? What street is it on? What does the street look like? Are people cooking? Can you smell the food? So I want you to get all these details, all right? And I want you to really push. And in this 15 minutes, don't stop, don't edit, don't try to make a logical step to the next line that you're writing. Just keep writing. Quit editing yourself. Get out of your own way. And once you start pushing out details, concrete details, like show me your grandmother's wrinkled hands. You know, I want to see her gray hair. I want to see the purple kitchen that she's sitting in. I want to feel the heat from the Mexico sun. You know, I want details. I want extremely precise details. Keep your pen moving. And before you know it, 15 minutes is up. All right. All right. So after that, you cleanse again. Up for the gym. You know, before you lift weights, you got to get some blood moving in your system. You have to get description, color, and poetic energy moving through your mind and your body. And so once you have done that, go back to your original poem after a break. Now you attack your poem quickly and vigorously. You jump right into the mess of it, okay? And I don't want you to think about beginning, middle, end, flow, anything. Too many times as editors in our minds, we stop ourselves from expressing what's in there. And we stop ourselves from letting this messy, tangled root actually blossom into something beautiful. So let it be messy, let it be dirty, let it get down into the soil. And once you do that, so you're going to do another 15 minutes of exactly what you did before, but it's going to be about the subject that you truly care about, that you need to breach. Maybe you're touching on the same topics. Maybe you're saying the same line over and over again, but just don't stop. And what I want you to do when you're done with those 15 minutes, which will go by quicker than you expect, I want you to go back into your notes. I usually write 3 pages of just notebook pages full of trash because most of my writing is not good poetry. And I think that a lot of people, when they write poems, they write their 10 lines of poetry and that's it. And for some people, maybe that works. But I'm not fully convinced that I think that it could actually be better if you dig deeper and if you produce a lot, because you'll sift through all of the easy, low-hanging fruit. So what you're going to do is pan for gold, what I call it. So you're going to look at your notes and you might see 3, 4, 5 jewels, gems, diamonds in the rough, hunks of unmelted gold. And you're going to circle them. And then you're going to pull those out and put them into another sheet of paper. And you can start playing with that. And to me, that's how you create the jewelry of poetry, is that you have to do deep mining. I would encourage you not to settle, to not write, your couple lines and think that that's as good as it gets and that's all it's going to be. I really challenge you to do those 15-minute work exercises of keeping your pen on the page and not lifting it and just going, and see what your subconscious can drum up. And many times, which is the most exciting part of this, many times you discover things that you never expected. And that's the good stuff. And so I would really hope that everybody takes a look at these workshops, gives them a try. I mean, not everything that works for me works for other people. And also, the other thing is too, if you're sharing your poetry and you're getting feedback and a whole room of people say, I don't know, it's not that good, I don't really feel it, I'm not really seeing what you're seeing, there is always the possibility that that entire room is wrong. So if you're reading these workshop materials and you're thinking, I don't know about this, you might be right. Like, this is not set in stone. This is not the gospel truth. But it's always good to be open and to have open ears and eyes to see opportunities to shift and adapt and go just a little further than what you're comfortable with. Because I said this to David a couple of weeks ago, there is a very big difference between being uncomfortable and being unsafe. I think that in today's world, people conflate those two things. And when they feel challenged or uncomfortable, they automatically feel safe, unsafe. But that's not always the case. Being uncomfortable is not the same thing. So I encourage you to step outside of your comfort zone, dig a little deeper, and be vulnerable. I say, if you're not writing something that if you're not scared to share it, I'm not sure I want to hear it. Yeah. I don't want something that I can find on a Hallmark card anywhere. I want something that only you, not me, not David, not anybody else in this chat, only you can produce. I believe that everybody has a light, a very specific light or gift or blessing, whatever you want to call it, instilled by them by God, Yahweh, the cosmos, the Tao, the ineffable, everything that is around us. I think we're all gifted with something, and only you can do it. So don't settle for something that anybody can say. And I think that
all right.
Eaten up a lot of time. So I'll rest the case.
David, do you want to add anything to that about that statement from?
Sure.
Anthony?
Yeah. Again, thank you, Anthony. While I'm sitting here, this is the second time that Anthony and I have officially done a workshop together. And I think one of the greatest things about when him and I come together to do a workshop is because we have two totally different styles of creating our poetry. But that doesn't mean but I learned so much from Anthony. There will never be a time when he has a workshop and I won't go. You know what I mean? If I'm available, I'm going, because the tools that he has that he just shared with you all, super valuable. And although I might not take the whole hammer, I might take the top part of the hammer. You know, that's the part that I need. So a lot of times my poetry comes out very quickly, you know, and sometimes I even hear Anthony in my head, like I'll think I'm done with a poem in 10 minutes, and Anthony, I've been to his workshop, so he'll be like, no, you need to keep digging for that gold, you know. And sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. And maybe it's arrogance, but I like to think if I write it down, then it's gold. Otherwise, I'm not writing it down. Or when I write it down, then I'm gonna immediately cross it out. So for me, and I'll continue with this, but just to back up, as far as the inspiration of where my writing comes from, a lot of times it is, like I said, what's going on in the world. So more recently, I've been writing about what it's like to be a Black, a brown man, a person during this time, during what I consider two global pandemics, right? So a lot of times for me, I'm not writing when I'm not doing 15 minutes of notes or anything like that to further come up with an idea, or to further develop an idea. But for me, like one of the poems I'm going to read today, I was in doing some yoga, and then the first line pops in my head, and I knew that it was something I had to keep going. So I was able to keep going. And I know for me, being someone who loves hip hop music and hip hop culture, a lot of times my poetry is rhyming, you know, and a lot of times it has that cadence, and it has those rhythms and those double entendres of people like Nas and Jay-Z. Not to say that I'm like them, but just in that of rhyming, you know. So a lot of times I'm excited when I can use a double meaning. You know, I'm excited when I hear a double meaning from a Jay-Z album that came out 12 years ago. Like, shit, he's really the lyrics are top notch, that I'm just now understanding what this line means 12, 15 years later. So yeah, I want to, you know, encourage you all, if it feels authentic to you, to be encouraged by what's going on around you and create your poetry from that space, you know, like really figure out what it is, not figure out, but be, you know, just be led when those ideas pop up into your head. Follow them. You know, you may come up with just one line and go with it, and use a combination of what works for you. I think what I'm really trying to stress is that if you are a poet or want to be a poet, then you're a poet, and that's it. And you can address it. You know, my poems, and some of the ones that I'll share today are kind of sing-songy, and they're nursery rhyme like. But I feel like they hit a certain point, or I'm able to make my point in a concise way. And even if it's a simple way, and that goes with my personality. I'm a very simple type of person. I'm very laid back. I like things just simple and laid back. So sometimes that is a reflection in my poetry, you know, and I think that speaks to what Anthony said, as far as, you know, that light and that certain message that you have. So let your, you know, if you're a hype type of person, then that could be reflected, you know, embrace that in your poetry. If you're super laid back, embrace that. If you speak in two languages, embrace that. If you like hip hop, embrace that. So let your personality shine. That's what's really going to, it's not even about separating it from anybody else, but that's what's really going to connect with the heart, because then it's coming from your heart, and that's where you're going to connect with people, and really that's what we're here for, right? To make that human connection with our art. So yeah, that's really what I wanted to share. Just, you know, figure out what your style is, and then always be willing to expand what your style is. Take little bits of information. If you're a poet, you should be, you know, attending these types of Zoom calls and just building your toolbox and creating it exactly for how you want it to be. And then but while you're doing some of those things, you can, you know, enhance it even more. You can learn to memorize your poetry. So I think 3 out of the 5 that I'll share today are memorized, and 2 are not. And that's because that's a new thing for me, right? someone like Anthony, memorizes all of his poems, and it's super inspirational for me. And he's one of the people that taught me how to do that. So just continue adding to your toolbox. And there's such a difference between when you're reading a poem and when you are reciting it from memory, which will also help your writing. So it's a beautiful journey as a writer, as a poet, and you get to grow and expand your art as you grow and expand as a person. Thanks again.
Is one of my favorites, and this time of year is when it sort of hits most. And I know we all have been experiencing this at the moment, and it's sort of a joke. It's a very morbid joke in the urban communities that we live in, where you don't know if what you're hearing is fireworks or gunshots. And it goes, let's see. Hot metal in his Yankee hands, flames fly from the sulfur, obliteration as celebration. Big man's got a fist full of sparklers. He turns a thunderclap into an ovation. Momentary illumination of faces. Shadows gnarl and features misshapen. A history of hatred makes him mistake slavers for martyrs. More in common with suicide bombers than his founding fathers, because he harbors a presumptive destruction. Eruption for him is not an if, but a when. It is not a possibility, it is the assumption. He releases chaos into the air, a projectile madness. He feels a bottle rocket levity, and the remains of savages are discarded like snap bang cigarette paper packaging, torn up and sort of distorted like the reports of mortars that hit reporters and the swarms of refugees who eat shawarma on borders of countries we've taken over by executive order. We fall into an explosive induced hypnosis, a kaleidoscopic psychosis. Eyes capture the color of the commotion as a flag waves in a star-spangled dystopia. Following the ethics of protect your neck pyrotechnics, he makes use of a short fuse without regretting it. Steadying his stock, he takes another shot like a true patriot. A pale flash sizzles and spills scarlet drizzle, white phosphorus raindrops. He speaks in knuckle crackling pops, and the world watches in horror as he flexes the arms he's got. All he needs is the flames from a toppled embassy, hospital, school, police car to ignite this. Protecting his interests disguised as kindness. He spreads his freedom like a virus, though it seems less contagious than his violence. And relentlessly, he fires into the black skin of the sky. And the ancient stars, they do not tremble at the indignity he launches towards them. No, they watch, unblinking, knowing that when his belligerence is over, when the last echo of his terror dies out, there will be nothing left but debris and the stench of gunpowder.
Appreciate that. All right, Mr. David, you are up, sir.
Cool. And I just also want to add one of the takeaways, one of the many takeaways from the poem that Anthony just read is his ability to not only rhyme words, but to rhyme sounds. So that's like super important. And I think that kind of separates you can kind of tell where a writer's at when they're able to do that. Even in hip hop as well, when lyricists are rhyming not only words, but they're rhyming sounds. So he said something about shawarma, and it was just top level mastery. And I'm going to read a poem in the same vein. Like I've said a few times. that we write about what's going on around us. And I have a poem that also speaks to some of the things that Lorena and Anthony just read with their beautiful pieces. And this came to me, I believe this came to me, there was I don't remember his name, but there was a young black kid that went viral from singing. He sang a little 2-minute song that his mom wrote, and it was about him not wanting to feel safe as a black kid. I don't remember his name, but I'm sure somebody has had to have seen it because he was pretty viral. But I watched that video, and then while I was doing yoga, one of the ideas from that popped in my head, and then I just ran with it. So this is called Hunted in Your Own Home. Do you know what it's like to be hunted in your own home? To be skinned, flesh and bone? To walk through the fire day in and day out? Have you studied the trauma that it brings about? In piles and piles, black bodies lay. Would you be willing to bet that hatred lives in a carcass long after it decays? Have you seen someone who looks like you be murdered in the most brutal way? Did you watch the story on the news at night? Did you have to go to work the next day? How about your stomach? Have you thought of fasting to help you ease the pain? And what about your children? Do you know what this does to a black child's brain? And how about my life? Would you look at it the same? If my skin were darker, my diction not so clear? If I had a record, would you justify my killing with your soul because my imminent death was near? Have you ever had to think about your people dying when trying to choose a lover? Or is it me who's had sex with someone only to realize that they were a racist undercover? Have you ever had a cop point a gun directly in your face? I did, and it was scary, but it helped me know my place. See, there's many things that you can tell me, but not much about my race. Instead, tell me that I matter. Tell me that you care. Tell me that you're willing to do the work. Tell me that you're not scared. Tell me that you mean it. Tell me that you cried. Tell me the last time a black body became a hashtag, a small piece inside of you died. Tell me you will read. Tell me you will listen. Tell me that you see your privilege and you're giving up your coveted position. Tell me that it's time. Tell me there's a new way. But if you can't tell me none of this, I'd rather you have shit to say. Because the strange fruit is still hanging, yes, right by the root. And if you can't tell me that you love me, then at least I know the truth. Thank you.
Again, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Again, at our climate nowadays, these words, this poetry is so profound now than it is any other time. It's because our culture right now is at a height. You know, I listen to NPR a lot, and they always throw these two words around: a racial reckoning. And what does that mean? What does that mean, a racial reckoning? I mean, everyone has to understand these problems with race have been going on since the discovery of America and beyond that, you know? And I know an issue I run into is, again, like Anthony is running in those circles because you can be considered white, can be considered Puerto Rican, black, or whatever. It's the understanding of the Caucasian mentality. And again, not everybody thinks this way. But the question I'm proposing to you guys is, how do you, with your art, is infiltrate those people's minds about stigma of race and what's happening to your people, my people, everyone's people of color? How do you navigate that, and how do you impact that, especially in the white culture, to make them think differently? And is it possible? That's the question. So whoever wants to go, David, since I have you spotlight, you can go first. I'll go to Anthony, then Lorena also.
Okay, so yeah, I think that's a great question. I think you do it honestly. So
Yeah.
you do it by being as honest as possible. And I think that was just symbolic in the way that all three of our poems were on kind of the same, you know,
Spectrum,
kind
yeah,
of the same vibe. And I was excited because that's how I feel about what's going on with the movement now, is that we're at a point where we can go back to, everything as quote unquote normal. We can let this die down. And I know that, and I think there's people that are waiting for this to die down. That's why when I knew I was coming with this poem, I was like, no, I'm putting continuing the pressure. And that's what I feel like we have to do with our art and with our, our movements, and how we're looking to create some type of change, is to really continue on, to keep the pressure on, keep our foot on the gas.